Well, yeah, I think first of all, if you have friends who've had board service, talk to them, learn from them. Um, if you're serving on a board, look around you, see who else is on that board, see who is contributing in a way that you find is meaningful. Have a conversation with them, learn from them about their experience, and always build a relationship with the CEO and the staff of the organization. Learn what their needs are. Every CEO has different way of working, has different needs, has different um, thoughts on how they want to engage with the board, and it really is the relationship between a CEO and a board really is a partnership, and it's about figuring out what their need is and what your need is and how to bring that together to advance the mission
Yeah.
that you're all there for.
Welcome to Chief Influencer. I'm your host, Anthony Schaap, co-founder of Social Driver. Washington is the center of influence in the US and arguably the world. We are featuring leaders who figured out how to break through in today's fragmented and noisy world. Social Driver teamed up with the Communications Board and the George Washington University College of Professional Studies to recognize these leaders as chief influencers and highlight how they inspire and influence others. Well, I am thrilled to introduce today's guest, Jeff Todd. He's the CEO of Prevent Blindness, the nation's leading volunteer eye health and safety organization dedicated to fighting blindness and saving sight. Before we dive in, here are a few things I think you should know about Jeff. Number one, he joined Prevent Blindness in 2003 as Director of Public Health and later served as Chief Operating Officer, where he oversaw the mission-based work of Prevent Blindness, focusing on program outreach, education, public health, and policy. Under his leadership, Prevent Blindness established the National Center for Children's Vision and Eye Health, a resource that promotes a continuum of eye health care for children across the country. Jeff also launched the Prevent Blindness Focus on Eye Health National Summit, a forum for national dialogue on vision and public health, and that's now headed into its 14th year. Number two, Jeff has had a really distinguished career focused on improving people's lives and their communities. He got his start at the governor's office of the state of Indiana, where he coordinated a statewide community development initiative supporting county-level health and safety interventions. He later moved to positions with the Washington, D.C.-based Center for Youth as Resources, engaging young people in matters that impact their communities, and also at the National Youth Violence Prevention Resource Center, overseeing information dissemination aimed at reducing rates of youth violence. Last thing I want to say is beyond his role at Prevent Blindness, Jeff is a leader among leaders in public health. He serves on the board of Vision 2020 USA as a trustee and North America Regional Chair for the International Agency for the Prevention of Blindness and is immediate past chair of the National Health Council. He previously served on the board of directors of Chicago-based Howard Brown Health and is a past chair of the Vision Care section of the American Public Health Association. Jeff, you have been called many things: JD, passionate advocate, board member, trustee, chairman, and of course, chief executive. Today, we're thrilled to call you Chief Influencer. Welcome.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me, Anthony.
Well, Jeff, I'm really excited to dive in. Public health is an issue, I think, on a lot of people's minds right now. You've worked in government, you've worked in nonprofits, you've really been involved both internationally and domestically in a lot of different issues. So we have many things to talk about and about different stakeholders in particular. But I wanted to start because you announced a really significant gift to Prevent Blindness recently. And I know that in your role, you've had to influence a number of different stakeholders, as all CEOs do, in your case, volunteers, board members, everybody in between. But it got me thinking, when you receive a big gift, I'm sure you have no shortage of ideas from everyone about what you should do with that and what the future is. So I wondered if we could start by hearing a little bit about how you decide what to do as a leader of an organization like Prevent Blindness when you have that incredible opportunity.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We just got a very, very nice, generous gift for us. It was close to $10 million. I think I normally stay away from this word, but I think it really is a transformative gift and it's going to allow us to do a lot. I think the first thing is about really honoring the donor. And for us, that took a little bit of digging. This donation came from the wife of a member of our board from the late 1980s and early 90s. And so we had to do a little digging about who this guy was and what he meant to the organization. That was a fun challenge for us. And then second is really to honor the gift. So much of what we do, all of what we do, is dependent upon our generous donors, whether that's a $5 gift all the way to a $10 million gift. And so honoring that and making sure that we use it wisely, make sure that it serves our mission and lasts for a long time is important. As you said, obviously, everyone has ideas, and that's part of the fun of this. And I love to just hear what everyone's thoughts are. And it came at a really good time for us. We are in the midst of wrapping up a strategic planning process for the next 5 years. And so we were allowed to just take a step back and consider, okay, we're developing this 5 year plan, and we just got this gift. What is this gift going to mean for the next 5 years, and how do we make sure that we can continue that well beyond those 5 years?
I'm just kind of curious if you could go a little bit more into, and I know it's still early stage, but as you think about an organization like Prevent Blindness, I mean, it's been around for over 100 years.
Well,
And so,
mm,
there are core parts of your mission that have stayed the same, but partly as a result of your own success as an organization, you've changed the focus as
absolutely.
well. Can you just talk about that? Because I always think it must be a unique challenge for a leader to come into an organization with so much history that's very different from somebody who's starting an organization, which of course has its own opportunities and challenges, but you came in to an organization with a legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. We were started again 117 years ago with a very specific mission. It was to eradicate a form of blindness, of infant blindness, that was rampant in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And ultimately, we were successful in doing that. And from there, from this very focused mission, over the next century plus, we've become all things eye health and eye care, and it's evolved over time. And in the mid 1900s, as during the Industrial Revolution, there was a lot of focus on eye safety in the factories and workplaces, and that was needed then. And now there's so much more regulation with OSHA, et cetera. We still have a focus on eye safety, but it's expanded beyond that. So we really focus in on eye health education, making sure everyone is aware of their eye health needs. One of the kind of unique things about eye health is every one of us is going to experience that, whether it's a need for glasses up to having potentially vision losing eye conditions. And so everyone needs to know about how to care for their eyes, and throughout various situations they need to learn about different eye conditions. And so that's become a major part of what we do. And certainly the advocacy component upon which we were founded continues to be a big part of our work.
Talking about kind of prevention, I want to ask you, when it comes to healthcare, I know people are probably pretty reactive. They don't want to think about the bad stuff that could happen. They don't necessarily think about prevention, if they don't have to. But obviously, you want to put that in focus. And maybe you could share a little bit about how you do that to influence some of the different stakeholders that are important to you, because you have policymakers, you have folks in local communities you work with, and everybody in between. What do you do to make sure people are remembering and focusing on prevention at all of those levels, when it may not be right in front of them in some cases?
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, prevention is in our name, prevent blindness. So it's very much what we're about, but it's also for our society, it's really challenging. We don't think that way. We wait until the condition or the situation has happened, and we deal with it then. And so many eye conditions, particularly those that ultimately lead to vision loss, much of the damage is already been taken place by the time we detect it, which is why it's so important for regular routine eye exams, vision screenings, so that we can detect vision problems early, get people into care. Not all, but many eye conditions, vision loss can be slowed or stopped altogether if we get people into care early. So that's why prevention and early detection matters. Now, to your point of how do we get people to really take that seriously? For the individual, it's about the education, just continuing to hammer that message of caring about your eyes, doing so early and often, and also caring for those of your family and your friends. But also from a policy perspective, it's one of our biggest challenges. A lot of policymakers, they want to see that immediate return. If they're going to pass a law or pass a measure to impact eye health, they want to be able to say a few years ago, okay, this act that I passed did this. And
Yeah.
that's not always the way it works in prevention.
Yeah.
The best measure of prevention, you don't see people sick because you're doing the right things. And so it's not that immediate return. And so we really need to focus in on the data that shows that the impact that we're having now through prevention is going to save resources, going to save lives, going to save vision well into the future.
I'm so glad that you brought up data because that's something that I wanted to ask you about. A lot of our chief influencers have talked about having to balance speaking to the head and speaking to the heart, particularly in advocacy. And in your case, Prevent Blindness publishes a lot of data-based and evidence-based vision research, such as reports on the prevalence of adult eye disease and the financial impact of vision problems on the US economy. And that economy tie is so important because we know that matters to a lot of policymakers as you can tie it back to economic impact. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you and your organization approach balancing data with storytelling to get your message through. And in particular, because you've worked in government and you've kind of worked on these issues from various vantage points as a board leader, also a member of the team, and then now as the leader, you've sort of seen this from various perspectives. So do you try to speak to the head and to the heart? How do you sort of balance that data and storytelling in your work?
Absolutely. Both are absolutely required. I've rarely seen a situation where the data alone is going to make the case. On the other side, I've rarely seen the situation where the great story is going to sell the case. It really requires both. And so being able to come in and tell that passionate story and ideally bring someone with lived experience in with you to share that story and their experiences is a great way to get people tuned into you and tuned into your work. But ultimately, especially if you're talking about policymakers, they're going to want to know, okay, what's the problem? And if you're talking, for example, with a state senator or a state congressman, they're going to want to know, okay, what is the vision problem in my state of Iowa? They want to know that data and that information. But, if we just come in on with the data information, that's not going to have the impact of having someone there to say, this happened to me. And I can just tell you an example. I was meeting with a congressman about 6 months ago or so. We're trying to advance a bill right now around children's vision. And we were talking about the data. And luckily, I had someone there with me who was able to tell a specific story about this child and how they accessed help. And they actually identified their vision problem through a driver's license screening. And it was a really fascinating story. And the member of Congress really honed in on that story. So the data wouldn't have driven the day. The story brought it home. So it's about coupling the two of those.
Yeah, and I think, that example that you give is a good reminder. Sometimes, different people respond to different things. So you have to be armed with the data and the storytelling because sometimes you have to combine them, but some people really are just designed more to react to stories. They're looking for that. And then some people always want to see that chart and that data. So you sort of have to adapt your
Yeah,
message
I
a little bit.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's why I think it's so important to do both because you never really know which is gonna which
Mhm.
someone is going to react more to. So coming in with both is really important.
I'm glad that you brought up an example around, policy and advocacy, because I wanted to ask you about that, especially for somebody who's sort of been on the other side of that. How important is advocacy to the work of Prevent Blindness, and what is your sort of approach to influencing public policy?
Yeah, as I shared earlier, we were founded around advocacy. When this problem occurred over a century ago, we ended up going our founders ended up going state by state to pass legislation to require this treatment that impacted this challenge they were dealing with. And so we were founded as an advocacy organization, and that's still a big major part of what we do today. And so when it comes to eye health, healthcare policy covers a wide gamut. And eye health is often lost in that. So, one of the biggest things that we can do as eye health advocates in Washington is to be at the healthcare table. Um, and and so we're not necessarily always looking for those pieces of legislation or those policies that will impact eye health. But if we can make sure that eye health is included in the healthcare discussion whenever healthcare is talked about, we're having a major win there. But we also spend a lot of time advocating for increased federal funding for eye health. There's a very small amount of dollars are dedicated to eye health in the US. And so we advocate for funding at the CDC, at the National Institutes of Health, the National Eye Institute, and HRSA to try to make sure that federal funding is there to support states, communities, to address children's vision and adult vision care. The third avenue is direct legislation. As I mentioned earlier, we're in the middle of trying to get some legislation passed that would provide funding to states to address children's vision problems. We were very successful in introducing this in the last Congress. It's the Early Detection of Vision Impairment for Children Act. And now with the new Congress, we're excited to be introducing it hopefully in the next month or two. One of the challenges obviously in advocacy is trying to get something introduced and passed in what is today and has been for a while a relatively divided Congress. So we always come at it from a bipartisan approach, and so we've had really strong bipartisan support for this bill, which is one of the reasons we think that we're hopeful that it's gonna make it through Congress this year. There are challenges facing it, but we have to come at it, bring all of our friends together. We do everything in partnership. This bill, for example, has close to 100 organizations sponsoring it. And so it's a lot of work that goes into preparing to get this legislation there. It's not just meeting with the members of Congress, it's making sure we have all those community supporters behind us, meeting with both sides of Congress, getting it introduced, and then bringing the advocates to the table, patient advocates, parent advocates, and others to really demand this legislation. So policy is a big part of what we do, but it has multiple arms involved.
You mentioned the organizations behind this particular bill. How do you go about getting coalitions together, especially folks that have their own priorities and they might think, "Oh, I'm going to water down what I'm doing if I jump on what you're doing because this is kind of your core issue." And what have you learned about that in your leadership?
I think the biggest thing, and this is one of the things that I think is core to my own leadership style, is building strong relationships.
Mhm.
And so it's not just coming to someone when we have something we want them involved in. It's building these relationships over time. And it's not just me, it's all of our staff. Everything we do is done in coalition or partnership. And so, it's about meeting with people regularly. It's about sharing what we're up to, listening to what they're up to, and being there to support them when they have something that they're interested in. We're not going to sign on to everything that all of our partners are doing, nor do we expect them to do the same. But when they come to us, we take those requests seriously, and we support the things that where there's a nice crossover, and we look for the same, and so it makes it a lot easier when I go to someone and say, hey, we have this exciting bill, would you consider signing on, when we've signed on to something they did a year ago. It makes
Sure.
it a lot easier. And so it's really about that long game. It's about partnerships. It's about playing well in the sand. We don't always agree with all of our partners, but we have some commonality with
Yeah.
everyone that we work with, and it's finding that commonality. And this children's vision bill, who can't be for children's vision? So
Right.
this has been a relatively easy ask, and we're so excited to have so many of our partners involved.
Well, it's such a great point to, get out there proactively and build relationships before you need them and to help other people. It's, kind of sounds like common sense. And yet in application, we see that a lot of folks wait until they need something to sort of reach out, and then it becomes more transactional. And I'd love to kind of talk about how that manifests not only sort of in the real world, but also in the digital world, because, we can't be in person with people all the time as much as we'd like. Everyone's busy. People are all over the place. And I've seen that LinkedIn is a really great tool for leaders to connect with one another. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, how you use LinkedIn as a platform, who your target audience is on there. Is that a tool that helps you stay up to date with people and to maintain or build some of those relationships that you're talking about?
Yeah, just to step back a second, I think COVID for me and for many people was an eye opener. I did not realize how important those interpersonal relationships were until we got into COVID and I wasn't seeing people personally. And we would be on Zooms, but those would be very transactional conversations. And so when we got back out into in-person meetings, I realized, oh wow, this is what was missing. But we still continue to do so much of our work digitally, and that's why I think LinkedIn for me has been very valuable. Prevent Blindness is on pretty much all of the social channels, but I focus my own attention primarily from a bandwidth perspective on LinkedIn. I do a little bit on Instagram too, but primarily LinkedIn because it allows me to connect and to build those relationships in a different way than I do when I'm having meetings.
Mhm.
It allows me to keep up with what our partners are doing. It also, in addition to what they might be doing from a professional standpoint, it allows me to see, oh, hey, Joe over here, just his kid just graduated. So next time I'm talking to him, like we can have a conversation about that. And so I really love yes, LinkedIn is mostly professional, but I love that you can learn a bit about the personal side of the people that you're interacting by following them and engaging with them. And it's a different type of engagement than we're used to of having conversations over dinner or over drinks, but it's one that I've grown to be very, very conscious of and appreciative of.
This episode is brought to you by the George Washington University's College of Professional Studies. With in-person and online programs ranging from master's degrees in public relations strategy to certificate programs in digital communications, GW offers more than just the credentials to help working professionals get ahead. It prepares them to be leaders in their field. I'm a proud GW graduate myself, and I can attest that the faculty members combine academic rigor with real-world lessons that can't always be found in textbooks. Check out cps.gwu.edu for more information. Yeah, and I think it's such a good reminder. I mean, on paper, business meetings and negotiations are all just these, transactional, mechanical things. But the relationships that people build and the personal connections they make, that really, turns into trust. And is this somebody that I, believe? And is this somebody that I, want to work with? And am I willing to listen to their point of view? And so making those connections, knowing things about people in their lives and being able to connect at a human level, it's maybe hard to quantify, but we know that that is such a powerful factor when you're doing something like building a coalition to get folks to support, your legislation, which they may support in theory, but it could be easy for them to just say, hey, we just don't have time, we have to prioritize. But that personal relationship, might put it higher on their agenda because they really appreciate you and they've connected with you and your team.
Well, and I'll also add to that from just a pure business financial situation. I've had more than one time when a um, pharmaceutical company, for example, has followed me on LinkedIn and reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, we have this great drug coming on the market. Can I have a conversation with you about supporting the great work at Prevent Blindness?" And it ends up in grant support to us. And so, if I wasn't on there posting and sharing what we're doing, they may not have even known about who we are as an organization. So it has resulted in both the relationships, but we also seen some financial advancements for our organization just through our engagement in social media.
Yeah, what a great ROI example. It
Yeah.
sounds like you
Yeah.
check your LinkedIn inbox then, because that's an important thing. If that message comes through, you don't want to miss it.
Exactly. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out which of those messages are real and which are made up, but I think we're all challenged with that these days.
Yes, I feel like it's if you're not doing anything, yeah, maybe you don't get much. And then if you start doing a good job, the downside is that, more people reach out to you, including people you don't necessarily want to hear from. But you kind of have to take that because it means that you're getting noticed.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to ask you along the line of relationships about board experience. So obviously, you have to build and develop a number of relationships in your role as CEO of Prevent Blindness, internally with your team, with the board that you have, as well as with outside partners. But one of the things that I find so interesting about you, Jeff, is that you have a ton of board experience, which we heard in your bio. And that ranges from, you're the immediate past chair for the National Health Council, which is the group that brings all the patient advocacy leaders together, known for doing that. You're the board of Vision 2020 USA. You're on that board. You're a trustee for the International Agency for the Prevention of Blindness. So that's sort of your global counterpart, as well as other organizations that you've served on the board of. And being a leader on a board, I think is, different in some ways, because you're having to lead a group of volunteers and be a leader of other leaders. And, they're not your employees. So it's a little bit of a different type of relationship. I wonder if you could share some of the lessons you've learned about influence in the boardroom.
Well, I think the most important thing, and I'm lucky, and some people who serve on boards have this same situation. I'm lucky in that as the CEO of Prevent Blindness, I have my own board. I have a terrific board. Since I've been CEO, I've worked under um, 4 board chairs. Before that, several others, and they've all been terrific. And so I've been able to learn how they operate as board members, but I also have that appreciation of what works for a CEO with the board. So when I'm on a board, I'm very cautious and cognizant of that important relationship between the board and the CEO, and understanding where my role starts and theirs ends, whether it's me as the CEO or me as the board member. So having both of those sides of that relationship in mind has been incredibly helpful for me. But I think the one thing I always keep in mind is that, especially when I've chaired a board, always be a team member first and a leader second. Ultimately, I'm a member of a board. It's a group of people. My role as leader is really just to facilitate the conversation, and to be that person who kind of has the more one-on-one direct relationship with the CEO for that period that I'm the chair. And so it's not about me. And when I'm on the board, it's not even necessarily about Prevent Blindness, even though often I'm representing the Prevent Blindness. If I'm working on the board of the International Agency to Prevent Blindness, my time on that board is focused on them and their work. And yes, my work at Prevent Blindness feeds into that, but being very cognizant of the hat you're wearing at any given time.
What advice do you have for somebody who might be, a new leader on a board? I mean, you mentioned one thing already, which is see yourself, if you're a board chair as a member of the team, not just the leader. But I just wonder if you have any other advice for somebody who might be an executive or a leader, but they're shifting into board service, and how they can really, contribute the most, because you've been on so many.
Well, yeah, I think first of all, if you have friends who've had board service, talk to them, learn from them. Um, if you're serving on a board, look around you, see who else is on that board, see who is contributing in a way that you find is meaningful. Have a conversation with them, learn from them about their experience, and always build a relationship with the CEO and the staff of the organization. Learn what their needs are. Every CEO has different way of working, has different needs, has different um, thoughts on how they want to engage with the board, and it really is the relationship between a CEO and a board really is a partnership, and it's about figuring out what their need is and what your need is and how to bring that together to advance the mission
Yeah.
that you're all there for.
Yeah, and tying that back to what you said earlier about the relationships being so important, I bet you're connecting on LinkedIn with your fellow board members when you join a board, and that seeing the, just what they're up to might make it a little smoother and easier when you go into a board meeting and you're chit chatting before and you know a little bit more about them.
Absolutely. It's the first thing I do if I'm on a board, and whenever I'm on a board, anytime new members come on, it's the first thing I do is connect with them on LinkedIn. Again, it's one of the best ways these days to make and build strong relationships over time. I mean, usually when you're on a board, you're on there for 3, 6, even 9 years, and so it's a long-term relationship. So getting to know the people that you're working with and getting to enjoy them. If you're serving on a board, particularly a nonprofit or charitable board, have fun with it. But it's also it's about the mission, but enjoy the time you're there. It's going to make the experience so much better for you and everyone around you.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you about an issue that's a challenge for a lot of people right now, which is misinformation. So, you spent so much of your career in public health, both in your job, but also through these boards that you serve on. And right now, it can be really hard to get accurate and trusted information out to people because, there's so much noise. And so when we think about the challenge of building a trusted brand that can break through that noise and that can rise above misinformation, whatever industry you're in, leaders are thinking about this, but certainly it's especially prevalent in public health. Is there anything you can share about your perspective on that, or what you've learned about that during this challenging time?
Yeah, I think for some reason the concept of public health is sometimes challenging for people to get their heads around. And frankly, sometimes those words have been politicized. And it's really about just having healthy people, having a healthy country. It's the difference is public health is about the health of the masses, whether that's your local community, your state, your country, the world. That's what public health is about, as opposed to personal health, your own individual health, or the health of your child. And so if you really think about, you know, do we value a healthy community? And that's not just about caring whether or not, the fella across the country is healthy. It's about the economy of the country. If we have a healthy country, if we have a healthy state community, we're going to have a more prosperous one. And so it's about making sure that we're growing and supporting one another. But I know personal health, and this goes back to the conversation about prevention. Personal health is more immediate, more visceral, more real, more to you at that moment. Um, but And public health is a little bit harder to think about, and it's harder to, I guess, appreciate. But it it's challenging for me that people don't understand the importance of public health, and so we need to continue to try to make that connection between individual health and public health. And it's one of the biggest challenges that we have at Prevent Blindness or any public health organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think right now, part of the challenge is just knowing who the right messenger is, because we used to be able to get messages out through a few, mass media
Yep.
platforms. And now we know that people are, following creators and influencers and listening to their neighbors and on various different platforms. And so they might see lots of different stuff, and it may not be the most trusted information. In your case, you have volunteers in, many parts of the country, and I suspect they probably are a really good conduit for you, because you can get your important information out into those local communities in a way that, can maybe combat some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's really important for people, and of course this is across all topics, to really make sure that they're digging a little beyond just the message that they read online and saying, okay, is this really true? Where's the evidence to back this up? And to try to make sure that they're getting accurate information. And so, at Prevent Blindness, everything that we put on our website or out in our social media has been reviewed by our scientific committees. It's all evidence-based, science-based. In fact, we're excited. We just launched this new AI tool. I know everyone's excited about AI these days. And it's this AI bot that will gather information on whatever you're searching for. If you want information about glaucoma, you can visit our website and go to this bot and say, give me information about glaucoma. But the great thing that I'm excited about this AI tool is it's internal to our website. So it only pulls information from our website that's already been vetted. And so we know what it pulls up is going to be trusted. It's not pulling from outside resources. And so it's just really important to dig a little bit deeper and make sure the information you're getting is accurate.
Yeah, what a great example. We'll share that. I love hearing about that.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one other sort of tough question before we close, which is, and I just say tough because I know it's on a lot of leaders' minds right now, but one of the things you said, I think it was when you were named CEO, that you said advancing equitable access to healthcare is essential to a healthy and productive society. And we know that right now, the term DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, is, under fire. And we hear of many organizations even scrubbing those words and related terms from their websites. So when you come in as a leader and you mentioned that advocates, with lived experiences are able to convey stories more effectively, and when you talk about the inequities in healthcare and how that's something that's really a priority for you, but also you're dealing with this exogenous factor, this, macro environment that you can't control. I'd be curious what your approach is as a leader, and maybe what advice you would have for other leaders that are grappling with this exact same challenge.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think first off, and it's hard for me, it's hard for all of us, not get caught in that particular moment. These are ongoing conversations. The conversation we're having around DEI is different now than it was a year ago. It's going to be different a year ago than it is now. I read something the other day that really struck me. DEI has, for whatever reason, become kind of a polarizing term, but we need to get away from that acronym. People can react to DEI, but when you really dig into those words, who can be against inclusion? Equity, if you really understand what equity means, and appreciating diversity and inclusion. So we need to look at the words. We need to dig into the words and not just get caught up in that acronym. I'll say Prevent Blindness has no plans at this point of making changes. We're not pulling DEI. We're not pulling our DEI statement from our website. But at the same time, I think, there may be times that we may be a little less forceful in using that term, but it doesn't mean that we're straying from our mission. Equitable access to eye care is going to remain our North Star. Everything we do is going to be about equitable access to eye care. May I say the word DEI a little less to get that point across in certain audiences? Probably, but it's not going to change what we're doing. And I think that's the approach that we have to have is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's continue to move things forward that are going to improve the state of vision care for everyone in this country. Don't let words get in the way, but also stay aware and stay active. And again, don't get caught in this moment.
Yeah, well said, and such a good reminder about, know what your North Star is. And I think it's a good time for organizations to sometimes even recenter around that and remind themselves, because sometimes maybe they've, you know, kind of not had that conversation for a while, and it's a good time to go back to it. And in your case, equitable access to eye care, becomes such a focus of what you do, and that can drive you no matter what terms you use to talk about it.
Absolutely.
The last thing I just want to ask you, Jeff, is in your career, you've done, many things, and especially I'm just impressed with how much you've done outside of your day job, so many leadership roles on boards, et cetera. I wonder if you could just, as you think about your own career arc, share maybe one lesson that you've learned about how to break through the noise and how to influence people to achieve the impact that you want to see as a leader. So what's your kind of takeaway about influence that you would like to leave us with?
I think it goes back to something I said earlier. I try to focus in on relationships, and it's about individuals. And so, like, whether it's my staff or the board or my personal relationships, get to know the people you're working with, that you're spending time with. And within my staff, for example, get to know the people first and then the teams. So, yes, I can be having a conversation with my program team, but that's a group of people. So understand the people you're talking with. Make sure that they understand you, where you're coming from, and just be real. So it really is about those relationships. You have good relationships with the people around you, the people you're trying to influence. Leadership's easy, and it can be fun too.
Well, Jeff, as you underscore relationships, you have some team members you've worked with for a really long time. And I think that certainly is a testament to your focus on relationships. And I've even seen some posts on LinkedIn where you're lifting them up and celebrating them. So I guess I'd ask you, do you find that as you deepen those relationships, that you're using both kind of the in-person and the digital tools as a way to sort of celebrate them?
Absolutely. We love celebrations at Prevent Blindness. We love celebrating our people. We love celebrating our achievements. And one of the things I'm most proud of is we don't have a lot of turnover here. People seem to love to work at Prevent Blindness, and they stick around a long time. I've been with the organization for coming on 22 years, and there are more than a handful of people who've been there as long. And I love whenever we're celebrating someone, to share that news broadly on LinkedIn and other areas. And I also love to share when one of our staff has written some great document or done something great to advance eye care, to share their news. We're a terrific team here at Prevent Blindness, and shouting their successes as well as the organization is really important for me.
Yeah, I love seeing that. And I think it just is, there's ripple effects, when you show people what you're doing. And as a CEO, you play that role of chief influencer to be the megaphone for all the great work your team is doing and to celebrate the culture. So I just really appreciate you sharing your story with us today. Jeff Todd, CEO of Prevent Blindness. We heard about your career journey and the importance of influencing a variety of stakeholders, including for advocacy, but also some of the lessons that you've learned as a board leader on a number of boards, as board member and multiple times as a board chair. And I think that is, really important to think about. What does it mean to influence others when I'm in a different type of role? And you shared, putting yourself as a member of that team, a member of that board first, before being the leader of that team, was a takeaway that really worked well for me. But I think overarching that theme that cuts through everything you said today is how much you value relationships, and relationships for the long term, not just for transactions, and how you really have to cultivate those relationships at the human level, as well as at the, doing business together level, and how you can do that in the real world, but also complement that in how you show up in the digital world. So Jeff, Todd, awesome to be with you today. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much, Anthony. It's a pleasure.
Chief Influencer is a production of Social Driver. We help clients transform complexity into clarity with people-centered strategies. Whether you're looking to elevate the influence of your brand or your leaders, check out socialdriver.com to learn more. For show notes or to nominate a guest, visit us at chiefinfluencer.org or follow Chief Influencer on LinkedIn.